Hey there, all you musical mavens. Welcome back to Broadway by Ghostlight. I'm Mark Bonanni, and this is episode 3 of Broadway Jeopardy. The response to the first 2 episodes has been so great, and so, as of now at least, we're doing it every Thursday, so make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell so you won't miss an episode. I've still got more theater history content besides Broadway Jeopardy on the way, so don't worry about that, I assure you. But I'll talk more about that at the end of the video. For now, let's just get right to this week's game. This is Broadway Jeopardy! The rules are the same as always, 5 categories with 5 questions each, where you'll get about 5 seconds to answer. And you should be answering in the form of a question, Jeopardy style, but honestly, you do you, boo. I'm not checking. Let's take a look over at the categories for this week. We have Musicalized Shakespeare, carried over from last week's final Jeopardy round, followed by 1997, all about that year in musical theater history. Next is Bob Fosse, the man, the myth, the legend. Then it's Blurred Lines. In this category, I'll show you a musical logo that's been heavily blurred, and you have to name that show. And last but not least is Name That Title, where each musical in question has a person's name in the title. We'll end the game, of course, with the final Jeopardy round, so make sure you're keeping score. Up first in the $200 round, what I call the Overture round, where the questions are really pretty easy to help you rack up some points early on. Our first question in Musicalized Shakespeare is, based on Romeo and Juliet, this 1950s classic musical features a score by Leonard Bernstein and Stephen Sondheim. The correct answer is, what is West Side Story, of course. Shakespeare's feuding families became rival gangs in the musical, the Caucasian Jets and the Puerto Rican Sharks. An early draft of the musical had the rivalry between a Catholic family and a Jewish family, and the musical was then called East Side Story. The next category, 1997, has this $200 clue. This smash hit Disney musical roared onto Broadway in 1997 and is still running today. What is The Lion King? Yes, The Lion King is now the 3rd longest running Broadway show in history, and it still sells out almost every single week. Just incredible. Moving on to the Bob Fosse category, the $200 clue is, Bob Fosse won the 1973 Oscar for Best Director for the film version of this Candor and Ab musical. What is Cabaret? Hopefully you got that one right. 1973 was a huge year for Fosse. Besides winning the Oscar for Cabaret, he won 2 Emmys for directing and choreographing Liza with a Z, and 2 Tonys for directing and choreographing Pippin.
Being characteristically pessimist and cynic, this and some of the other nice things that have happened to me in the last couple of days may turn me into some sort of hopeful optimist and ruin my whole life.
For the Blurred Lines category, remember the image will be blurry and you have to name the show. The first visual clue is this show here. What is Wicked? Are you as excited as I am for the upcoming film version?
I am.
The trailers look amazing. Finishing out the Overture round in the Name That Title category, we have this musical's title character, a boy who won't grow up, was created by Mary Martin. What is Peter Pan? A magical performance by Miss Martin that lives on through the filmed version. Miss Martin actually filmed the show 3 times for television in 1955, 1956, and 1960, the latter of which is probably the version you're most familiar with, the color version.
I fly over bed
Alright, let's get to the only slightly harder $400 round. We circle back to musicalize Shakespeare and this clue. This 1948 Cole Porter musical features characters Lily Vanessy and Fred Graham performing in a musical version of Taming of the Shrew. What is Kiss Me Kate? One of my personal favorite musicals, the 1953 film version was actually released in 3D, believe it or not. That's why if you watch the film, you'll notice lots of things being thrown at the camera or people flying at the screen. True story, I actually own a 3D TV just so I could own Kiss Me Kate in 3D and watch it at my leisure, which I do, and I love it.
Well, good for you.
Next up for 1997 is this clue. This musical thriller about the duality of man features the songs Facade and This Is the Moment. What is Jekyll and Hyde? Jekyll and Hyde was my first Broadway show, actually, starring David Hasselhoff. And somehow I still wanted to see more shows. I remember the poster they were selling at the merch stand for Jekyll and Hyde with the Hoff had the tagline, "This is no day at the beach." It was a different time. Let's jazz walk over to Bob Fosse and this clue. This legendary Broadway performer was Bob Fosse's wife and muse. The correct answer, of course, is who is Gwen Verdon. The incomparable Miss Verdon appeared in 5 shows choreographed and or directed by Fosse. It was a collaboration unlike any other, that's for sure.
Who's got the pain when they do the mambo? Who's got the pain when they go, Who needs a pill when they do the mambo? Who needs a pill when they go,
Next up for Blurred Lines, we have this iconic logo. What is Mamma Mia is the correct answer. The woman posing as the bride was simply a stock photo model. Can you imagine doing some random modeling work for probably like $200 and then have your image be plastered all over London and New York for over a decade? Wild. Let's finish off the $400 round with this clue from Name That Title. This musical starred Ben Platt and featured the songs Waving Through a Window and You Will Be Found. What is Dear Evan Hansen? I actually have one of the actual arm casts worn by Ben Platt. Here, I got it right here. I collect a lot of props in the costumes for Broadway shows, and this is one of the ones that Ben Platt actually wore in the show. Yeah, the actors playing Evan Hansen had to have a real arm cast put on every single performance and then have it cut off after. That's nuts. Starting off the $600 round with this clue from the musicalized Shakespeare category. This 2015 musical comedy features Shakespeare as a character and his feud with the fictitious Bottom Brothers. What is Something Rotten? Another favorite show of mine. Shakespeare was originally played on Broadway by Christian Borle, who was just amazing in the role and won the Tony for it.
It's hard to be the bard.
Traveling back in time again to 1997, we have this musical drama about a real-life tragedy won the 1997 Tony Award for Best Musical. The correct answer is, what is Titanic? The musical, with a score by the great Maury Eston, featured a set that would actually fully tilt to one side and seemingly sink. I wish I could have seen it in person. That would have been amazing to behold. Over at Mr. Fosse's category, we have this old school headwear was a favorite of Fosse's and often used in his choreography. The correct answer is, what is a bowler hat? Bob Fosse often used hats, especially bowler hats, in his choreography, reportedly because Fosse himself often wore hats after he started going bald at a very young age. I don't know, I just can't imagine anyone constantly wearing hats just because they're losing some hair. moving on. The $600 clue in the blurred lines category is this blurry image. What is How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying? What do y'all think of this blurred lines category? Is it working for you? Let me know in the comments what you think. I really love these visual categories. Finishing out the $600 round with the Name That Title category and the clue, this musical from 2000 with a score by Tim Rice and Elton John is based on an opera of the same name. The correct answer is what is Aida? Based on the Verdi opera of the same name, Aida has been rumored for a Broadway return for a while now to be directed by original cast member Shelley Williams. I hope that comes to fruition. I love that score and that show. It's time now to really turn up the heat with the $800 round, but quickly before we do, if you're enjoying this video, please hit that like button right now. It helps get more eyes on this video and my channel, and it really helps me out personally. Thank you so much. All right, back at Musicalize Shakespeare, the $800 clue is: the jukebox musical All Shook Up, featuring the songs of Elvis, is loosely based on this Shakespeare gender-swapping comedy. What is Twelfth Night? There has actually been several musical adaptations of Twelfth Night, like Play On and Your Own Thing, to name but a few. Over at the 1997 category, we have this precociously optimistic musical celebrated its 20th anniversary with a Nell Carter-led revival. What is Annie? Yes, the show had a 20th anniversary revival in 1997 at the Al Hirschfeld Theater, which was a category on the first episode of Broadway Jeopardy. Besides the great Nell Carter as Miss Hannigan, the young star-to-be soloist in the NYC number was none other than future star Sutton Foster. The $800 clue for Mr. Bob Fosse is: this revue-like musical from 1978, created by Fosse, featured the songs Crunchy Granola Sweet and Mr. Bojangles. What is Dancin'? A revival of Fosse's Dancin' reached Broadway recently in 2023 and had far too short a run, in my opinion at least. The $800 clue for Blurred Lines is this energetic musical. What is Newsies? As someone who grew up in love with the original film, it was a thrill to see it on stage, though I am still bitter that they cut Patrick's mother from the show. Wrapping up the $800 round in the Name That Title category, we have Natasha, Pierre, and the Great Comet of 1812 is based on a sliver of this famous Russian novel. What is War and Peace? Great Comet only covers about 70 pages of the 1,200 plus page novel. One of my all-time favorite musicals. If you don't know it, go listen to the cast recording. It's incredible. All right, fellow theater nerds, kick those Broadway brains into high gear because we have reached the $1,000 round. Good luck, everyone. The final clue for Musicalize Shakespeare is: this 1971 rock musical based on the Shakespeare play of the same name beat out Sondheim's Follies for Best Musical. The correct answer is what is Two Gentlemen of Verona? A decision that's still hotly debated today. Gentlemen beat out Follies for the 1972 award for Best Musical, but Follies did bring home the Tony for Best Score at least. I think they would have burned down the building if it lost Best Score. Our final trip back to 1997 brings us the clue: This short-lived musical was about real-life conjoined twins in the 1930s. What is Sideshow? Based on real-life conjoined twin sideshow performers Violet and Daisy Hilton, the original production starred Emily Skinner and Alice Ripley as the sisters. Skinner and Ripley made history by being nominated as a pair for Best Actress at the Tony Awards that year. Our final foray into the fabulous Fosseverse is this clue. This actor played Joe Gideon, Fosse's avatar, in the film All That Jazz from 1979. Who is Roy Scheider? Yes, the Jaws star played Joe Gideon, a famous director slash choreographer in Turmoil, in Bob Fosse's masterpiece and almost autobiographical film All That Jazz. Definitely check that out if you haven't seen it. And Roy Scheider would be nominated for an Oscar for his portrayal of Gideon.
It's showtime, folks.
Alright, the last entry for Blurred Lines is this revival artwork of an early 90s musical. What is Falsettos? An incredible musical by William Finn, it combines two one-act musicals, March of the Falsettos and Falsettoland, into one evening's entertainment. There is a third connected musical called In Trousers, which chronologically comes before the other two. The final $1,000 clue for the game and for the Name That Title category is: this musical from 1991 about a Ziegfeld-era humorist was nominated for 11 Tony Awards, winning 6, including Best Musical. What is the Will Rogers Follies? Yes, the Will Rogers Follies had a score by legendary artists Cy Coleman and Betty Comden and Adolph Green, and starred Keith Carradine in the title role. One of the many highlights was an inspired bit of choreography by the great Tommy Tune. It is now time for the final Jeopardy round. Pew, pew, pew. It's time to wager your hard-earned fake money for a chance at even more fake money and glory.
Glory.
Here is your final Jeopardy category: History on Stage. Looking at musicals with historical settings. Make your wagers. Your final Jeopardy clue is: this Sondheim musical from 1976 is about 19th century Japan and its forced westernization. What is Pacific Overtures? According to Sondheim himself, his favorite song he ever wrote was Someone in a Tree from Pacific Overtures.
I am in a tree, I am 10, I am in a tree. I was younger then.
I think I've seen 2 different professional productions of it, one on Broadway, one off Broadway. It's a beautiful show, but it's not for the most casual theater goer, I'd say. Well, how did you all fare this episode? Make sure and tally up your final scores and write it in the comments. I love hearing how you guys did. And again, if you enjoyed this and want me to keep on making episodes weekly, let me know by giving this video a like and sharing it with the theater nerd in your life. As always, a huge shout out over to my patrons over on Patreon. I think I'm going to have the patrons choose some categories for upcoming episodes if that's something that interests you. You can follow me over on Twitter and Instagram at Ghostlight. But until next week, I'm Mark Bonanni. This is Broadway by Ghostlight. Thanks for playing.